you doing?
Great, Randy. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Great to have you. You are so special. We actually hand selected you for episode 150 of the Tech Sales Insights. How's that?
Best thing I've heard all day, I guess. I wish the Mega Millions numbers were so fortunate last night. We wouldn't be on here, but
There you go.
I'll take 150.
There you go. Maybe go bet it. And for Alabama Nation, roll Tide. So if BC can't be be one of the four, we'll take Alabama. Anyway, so really excited to have Jim Nyhan with us today. He is Director of America's Enterprise Sales at CyberProof. Title topic is Selling Managed Cyber Services to Enterprise Clients. So yet another very different topic than anything we've had before. We're sponsored by Phone Ready Leads. Was an awesome company. They've helped a lot of the sales community advisory board folks to improve the hit rate of their cold callers. So on average, cold callers might get like a 5% hit rate. And Phone Ready Leads goes up to like 20%, which is amazing. They just got acquired by the company Apex Revenue and CEO Joey. So a lot of great things to come there. For those that are members of sales community, thank you so much. If you are not, Tucker will throw up a free link, salescommunity.com/fall free. So feel free to join great content and things there. So by way of introduction with Jim, he lives in Andover with his family, has a son and daughter, and usually ask people interest besides work and family. He said it's really, if I'm not working, it's I'm all in on family. So love that, and great way to lead by example. Unlike some of the guests like Tom Haney we had last week, Jim and I have only kind of recently met through some mutual friends. So it's been great to get to know you. You're definitely one of the better early stage sales leaders. Been through kind of 0 to 100 million in 3 years, 3 times successful exits, but also with there obviously some that are not successful, which a lot of times the failures are a lot that we can learn from, not just the successful ones. So look forward to talking about that. And along the way, you had Medic and Sandler, or as you say, Medpic now, have been great leverage points on the sales go-to-market side. Also got from Will, I don't know if it says last name, Locandro, said, there you go, be prepared to hear a few Nyhanisms. One of which is now is not soon enough, and the other one is you can't shoot a buck from the lodge. So look forward to asking you about those later. So we jump into the questions here. So proud Boston College graduate, so love that. BC 89, played baseball, so bird ball there, awesome. And also BC High. But first job out of college, I think, was with Annixter.
I was actually recruited from BC there. Me about that company was NXT. I stayed there for a while. We actually, investing in themselves is what appealed to me, because I was really in the market. So there was a fair that sort of paved the way for me, and it was overall a great experience, and it really led as a springboard for a lot of the other things I did in my community.
Oh, awesome. And then if you can maybe quickly go through your impressive career from there.
Sure. Well, I started off, I guess they have these very glamorous terms called SDRs and BDRs today, but when I was coming up, it was an inside sales guy. That was it. And there wasn't a lot of automation.
Telemarketer. I was a telemarketer.
Yeah, there you go. And there wasn't a lot of automation tools. There weren't database tools. I remember the first day on the job, I got back from training 2 weeks later, and my boss put the yellow pages on my desk and said, "You got a desk in the back with a phone and an old computer, good luck." But it teaches you resilience, and it teaches you how to be tenacious, but it also teaches you need to plan your day. You need to be prescriptive on how you outreach to customers. You need to have a value message, and all the things that have served me well over the years in my career. So I was fortunate to be part of a big company. It was a $2 billion company back in the day. They did a lot of things, but ultimately specialized into tech and then kind of everything else. So as tech was becoming a little bit more mainstream, I migrated to the tech side of the business, and and again was promoted and ultimately ran a small $5 million P&L for them at, I don't know, 26 or something years old. And then ultimately we had a $25 million business, and then ultimately was running a $250 million full P&L when we were acquired by AT&T. So I literally never moved my office, just changed my business card with the same phone number and said AT&T versus Annixter. And it was a really, really good experience from that point. And I was I think I was in my maybe early 30s. And I remember going to Dallas for my review, and my boss said, geez, you had a great year. You grew the business by 26%, and you're a salary grade 9 though, so your raise is only 4.6%. And I'm like, thought this was meritocracy, Tom. Pay your players, right? And so I knew at that point that if I just wanted to maintain, I could still be there. And I just had more of an entrepreneurial niche. And I made that decision to say, I want to take my shot at some of these early stage companies. I really want to be part of the ecosystem to help a company refine and define their go-to-market message, bring people into the organization, hire out great high performing sales teams. And I've done that. So I had 5 pre-product Series A startups under my belt. And I think you hit it earlier, where it's a mixed bag. There's no guarantee of success when you join a startup. I think that over maybe the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years, it's been glamorized that, hey, just go in, find a startup and you'll get an exit and everybody will be happy monetarily and otherwise. And that's clearly not the case. You see a bit of a cleanse happening in that market today, right? But I was really fortunate in the early days to have some great mentors. We'll talk about that later, but joined some startups. My first startup, Cosign, was kind of the go-go days of the internet build out, sort of as I think you were in the middle of that too, in your EMC and post EMC career. The big iron days of the telco build out, right? I was part of that. And then I went to a really, really early stage company in Riverbed thereafter. And they thought I was crazy to say, this company doesn't even have a commercially viable product yet. What are you doing? And a little bit of luck, a lot of hard work, and a lot of good people that I worked with and for. And we grew that business from, you mentioned it, 0 to 100 million with one product in 3 years, and then 0 to $1 billion with one product in 10. And so those are tech milestones that are really, really hard to meet and reach. And you can only do that with a lot of really good things, good people, good sales motion, a lot of tenacity, a few lucky breaks, competitive differentiation, and the like. And so I then have done a series of really, really small companies, went out on my own for a little bit because I really wanted to help early stage companies and apply what I learned at both Cosign and Riverbed and say, hey, let's really kind of hone in on your ideal customer profile. Let's really hone in on how you want to go to market. What I find is a lot of tech entrepreneurs, there's a founder's pride issue that I'm sure you're familiar with, but a lot of the tech entrepreneurs think that, hey, I'm the smartest guy in the room, or I'm the smartest person in the room, and I can do it all. All we have to do is show up with a really great product and it'll sell itself. And history tells me that's not the case. And if you have a collaborative leadership team that says, okay, I'm putting equal weighting on both tech, sales, and marketing, and obviously client success. Those are 4 pretty powerful legs to a stool to build a company. And I think if you see some of the companies that don't make it, and I've been part of those too, usually there's a flaw in 1 or 2 of those legs. And a stool can't stand on 2 legs, Randy. You know that, and I know that. So it's really interesting. I've been in this tech ecosystem. You and I traveled in different circles. I've migrated more towards the small company stuff only because I guess at the end of the day, I'm just a frontline guy. I love being in front of customers, regardless of title, regardless of size of company. You mentioned it on last week's podcast with Tom Hannigan, is how many sales calls are you doing? And I always took pride in that myself, regardless of making sure you have that connect point with customers, especially as deals get more complicated, competition gets more fierce, deals get bigger. It's hard for a rep just to carry the laundry with him or herself and an SE, right? You really need to make sure you kind of button up all those little loose ends that I know we'll talk about here as far as true enterprise selling and differentiation. And as things get a little tighter, budgets are getting tighter today, as we all probably feel. Is the strong will survive. The good tenacious salespeople that have a good value message, that know how to sell. There's certainly an element of hard work. And I think one of your questions today was, do you expect salespeople to work on the weekend? Sure, I expect me to work on the weekends. Sunday night for me is buttoning up my week and planning out my forecast and team meetings and customer focused meetings. And that's the lifestyle we sign up for when we decide we want to, pursue this crazy lifestyle. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I love building businesses. I love working with people. I think tech is exciting. Tech has a lot of, interesting and innovative solutions. Separating the wheat from the chaff is the important thing with customers. What's a nice to have versus a need to have. I know we'll touch on that a little bit as well. So let me turn it back to you. That's a quick summary of what makes me tick and some of the things I've done over the last 25 years or so.
Awesome. So you mentioned founder's pride. I certainly have friends that, the CEO thought the company was the best thing since sliced bread. They missed the numbers. The numbers are too high. CRO gets fired and then subsequent CROs get fired as opposed to the CEO or the product team. So can you talk maybe other perspectives on that founder's pride? And then how do you kind of qualify for that so you don't go into a company like that, which a lot of times is hard because they'll say, oh yeah, we're sales and we're pro customer and all that.
Yeah, I've had a few of those experiences going in and highlighting that exact scenario. Hey, you've had 3 CROs in the last 4 years. What's different now? Oh, I've changed, I've mellowed, and I'll do this, and they don't. It's when times get tough. How do you react, right? In the face of stress, what is your reaction? I remember doing this sort of the 4-quadrant personality profile when I was a younger salesperson, and where do you fit and how do you communicate with people that aren't really wired like you are? Not everybody can do that, and not everybody can to say, "Hey, I'm going to put my chips in front of somebody else." So, in defense of the founders, I understand what they're up against. Right? Oftentimes, they have their own capital at stake. Maybe they have friends and family capital. But I lived it at Riverbed, and I'll give you a really good example where we had a co-founder who was a Berkeley professor, one of the brightest guys that I've ever met. Knew that he did not want to be the face of the franchise, knew it. And so he was comfortable just doing DevOps with his guys in the Skunkworks basement, right? Say, okay, I'm comfortable here. He went out and hired a CEO who was more of a finance guy who admitted that he didn't know how to sell. So he brought in a high-powered sales leader. So everybody had their roles of this, okay, I admit that I have a weakness in this particular area. Not every founder is wired that way. It's almost like, hey, I built this great thing that I can basically do everything. So I think fleshing out how founders think about sales and marketing and engineering and customer support, all those things, and how do they weight them? I would say that do you put an equal weighting on those things to grow a company? Because I've seen high growth companies. And it's an egoless company where you just put your pride in your back pocket. Everybody's treated as an equal because all of your calories and energy are focused on the customer, doing right by the customer. I remember, I'll give you a Jeff Bezos-ism. Early days of Amazon, when I think there were various websites about the impending demise of Amazon, probably funded by Walmart. But all kidding aside, he was saying, hey, I don't look at the competition. And so if we just take all of our energy and we focus on our customers and we do the right thing by our customers, good things will happen. So if you take your eye off that and focus on competition, those are calories that you could have better spent in front of customers. And so I find good companies abide by those, general principles. And if you have an ego list, like at Riverbed as an example, no employee numbers. And if you even talked about your employee number, then you were put in the corner. You were definitely given a timeout. And that was just one example of how leadership was taking an egoless approach to say, no, this is how we have to build a business. And we have heady competition. We competed against people like Cisco and F5 and Juniper and Citrix, very well-known companies in the industry that already had existing relationships with customers. So if we just internalize things and wasted a lot of time on ego battles or silo battles with our internal constituents, then it's going to take away from the mission. And so if you can get flush out in your interviews, anybody that's out there interviewing, if you can flush out some of this with the leadership and just understand how they think about the core principles of teamwork, especially, and be on the alert for some of what you just mentioned. Why have you had 3 CROs in the last 4 years? Why have you had 3 VPs of marketing? Or why are you also the VP of marketing and the CEO/founder? Those are some things you should flush out and make sure that you're going to invest to grow. Because I had a very close friend of mine was one of the executives at Lucent and kind of saw the storm clouds coming and left. And he said, geez, I spoke to Rich McGinn and we had this plan to save our way to prosperity. And I'm like, that sounds like a zero-sum game. And he said exactly right. That's why that's why I decided to go elsewhere. And so, investing to grow and making sure that you have a really well-pointed area where you're going to put your capital, put your calories, put your people, and put your resources, and hold them accountable, Randy. At the end of the day, that's what we get paid to do. Right? We get paid to take all of what the company has, coalesce that in front of the customer, make sure the customer understands your value, and ultimately then have them as a customer for life. And if you can achieve those goals, you build a great company and you have great career opportunities for the people within your ecosystem.
Awesome. Great. Hey, just as a reminder, so anybody watching along, feel free to comment or ask any questions. You can see us or hear us. We cannot see you or hear you unless you post something there. So feel free. And we got Tucker behind the scenes as always. So Tucker, thanks for your help, and he will pull that up. So anyway, so CyberProof, you just started there in November. Tell us a little bit more about CyberProof.
Yeah, thanks. I'll tell you a little bit about what brought me here first. The company. Well, let me tell you about the company first. It's really a cyber advisory practice. And so, what does that mean? We're part of this $2 billion parent company that wanted to bring additional value to customers and really invested in a set of cyber specialists. And so our division does just that. We go in as a consultative resource for customers and talk about all things cyber, everything from let's do an asset rationalization practice of what do you have today, how effective is it working, to threat intelligence, threat hunting. Look no further than some of the public breaches that we'll talk about that are really scary and ultimately not just punitive reputationally, but punitive financially for customers. And it's what you find is that it's a cat and mouse game, right? In as much as you increase your cyber defenses, then the hackers increase their cyber sophistication and their methods of attack. And so having an external partner that can really have deep expertise that you can tap into when you need it and or on a steady state basis is what appealed to me. So the CyberProof bench is very deep and very, very much filled with specialists and deep specialists. So I find that customers, especially enterprise customers, where I've made my living for the last 25 years and built tremendous relationships, is you can never have enough good talent. And that talent, in as much as people are great, they're generally stretched to the limits, whether it's just increasing their own internal cyber defenses or internal projects, or they have to take a vacation, or a kid gets sick. So having an ecosystem of both internal and external constituents is, in my opinion, very valuable. So CyberProof is here. It's probably not as well known as competitors in the market, which is interesting. I think a lot of people will look at our parent company, USD Global, and say, "Oh yeah, I know those guys. They're a $2 billion company." Like, "Oh, did you know they have a cyber division?" So that's one of the reasons I was brought into the company to say, "Hey, let's make sure that we are no longer the best kept secret in cyber."
Great. And how do you sell?
So it's a couple of different motions. We're a direct sales organization today, and we're not a volume player. I'll say this, I can't give you the exact numbers, but of the 2 billion in revenue, you'd be shocked at how few those customers are. Like at Riverbed, we had tens of thousands of customers. We don't have that at CyberProof because we have this trusted advisor relationship with these customers, and we go deep and wide. And so oftentimes that's how we get introduced to customers to say, "Hey, are you aware of this specialty division we have?" Or, "Geez, you had a breach." Look at some of the more publicized breaches that we'll talk about here in a minute. To say, if they're an existing USD customer, boom. We're also a Microsoft partner, and you look at Microsoft and some of the progress they've made over the last 5 to 6 years in cyber. 5 years ago, Microsoft, all due respect, was probably not best in class in most areas of cyber. They've made an incredible investment and have come a long way and have some firepower that is pretty unique insofar as being able to sell enterprise licensing and so forth. And we are their trusted global partner. We're one of the largest Microsoft partners about stitching things together, helping them migrate to cloud, digital transformation, maybe moving off of competitive security tools. I don't want to drop too many names. But those are complex projects, Randy. Those aren't we'll put two guys in a dark room for a weekend. That's a team of tens over the course of many, many months with project milestones and so forth. And so our selling motion is really involved with deep relationships with customers, being trusted advisors, and bringing a lot of specialists to bear.
Awesome. And are you interviewing or have openings for new sales folks?
Always, yeah. Anybody on the podcast, Randy can provide my contact info. You can find me on LinkedIn. We're always looking for great talent. I learned that throughout my career, is that you're only as good as the team you have with you and around you. And so I've been very fortunate to have a lot of great teammates throughout the years, and I'd be thrilled to have them come to work with me again.
Awesome. And what's special about the culture?
Well, the culture is made by the people, right? At the end of the day, I think top-down leadership defines culture. And and you probably have gleaned this from our discussion thus far in the last 23 minutes, it's all about customer-facing value, right? Customer touch, customer value, and really staying current, right? If you stay current with bringing value to customers, you'll be a forever partner. And so I think that culture can really be emanated throughout an organization, that do not internalize things. Every company has their challenges. Every company has their processes. Every company has their, a spate of politics. But if you can minimize those and really focus on the customers, you're going to have customers for life, and they're going to trust you. They're going to advise you. And I've been really fortunate in my career where if you do the right thing for the customer, they're going to do the right thing for you, and you can have a customer for life, regardless of what your business card says, And so I'm really proud of that, to say that if you bring a lot of high integrity, you bring value, and really you do what you said you're going to do, when you're going to do it, at the price you said you were going to do it at, then that's a great marriage with a customer. They got value, they paid for it, you got a great customer, you made a little bit of money, and then on you go to tackle the next challenge together.
That's awesome. So jumping into our title topic, selling managed cyber services to enterprise clients. So I think you're big fan of platform over product. Can you explain that?
Yeah, it's I've lived on the product side for the last 20 years, and I was always the one going in there and saying, hey, this is the best product and you should buy that insofar as your ecosystem. And larger companies, they have a better advantage because they can bundle things together, and they can get creative with pricing and so forth and so on. Well, I think now what you've seen, there's a few headwinds, arguably, in the tech sector. You've seen a number of layoffs, and sort of the post-COVID sugar high is now we're probably paying the price for that, right? And so customers, I think, are going through a really intense scrutiny of what is it you're buying, what is it that you're renewing, and can we do more with what we already have? And so these ecosystem partners, what I find is these ecosystem partners, won't name names, but the bigger players have an innate advantage. They can do enterprise licensing agreements. They can sell the customer on consumption models. They can sell the customer on buy down consumption models. And even if they're not best in class on a minutia basis, if it's a point product that does a small little thing, those companies are going to be at risk for sure. And I know for a fact that customers will look at their enterprise license and say, okay, where am I consuming that and where am I not? And that scrutiny is going on, not just in IT. And so platform is going to trump product, especially when there's headwinds in the economy. That might be a little bit of a deviation than what happened leading up to and during COVID, when things were maybe a little bit looser. Hey, I've got to support work from home or work from anywhere, and I've got to support this and I've got to support that. I'm just going to kind of throw money and tech at the problem. I see that being dialed back significantly, and when in doubt, platform is going to win.
Awesome. And especially too, I think a lot of people are trying to consolidate, right? They already have too much. So how does all that work?
Well, I'll give you an example. I looked at a stat last week, and it said on average, enterprise customers have something like 270 different SaaS platforms that they either bought and or operationalized. I mean, think about it. Just get your head around that. And how do you integrate all that and get value from that? And to me, that's a number that is going to be under siege for sure. So it underscores the point you just made for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know just from, talking to CRO friends with sales community events and different things, just the sales tech stack alone can be kind of 50 plus, and, people are looking to consolidate. But what about your experience is interesting on level of involvement with the CFOs?
Yeah, it's I come from a family of accountants, and of course at BC, you're either an accounting or a finance major, or like you and me, sales and marketing majors. But all kidding aside,
And there's liberal arts, and there's education and nursing. So we got to be,
sure.
we got
Yeah,
to be cooperative.
I had cousins in the nursing program. All due respect, but my brother was runs the family accounting business. So he and I, we have interesting yings and yangs over Thanksgiving dinner about how a CFO thinks about it and how a salesperson thinks about it. But in all seriousness, especially in today's climate where there's a few headwinds, budgets are under scrutiny at a minimum, if not under siege. Everything is going to go through the CFO office. I mean everything. And so my advice and how I approach it is, you got to get there proactively, and you got to get there early, and you have to have a compelling ROI. If it's a nice to have, I would not be forecasting that renewal or forecasting that deal, because it's going to be delayed until you can really prove that this is a must have. And so my advice and how I've always operated is that in enterprise selling, of course, it's very complex, right? You've got different stakeholders with different agendas, some of whom may feel threatened, and some of whom may not support the budget. And you have to do your best job is to win those people over and convince them how risky it is for them to wait and do nothing, first of all. And number one. Number two is, what happens? How do you pay for it? What's the ROI? And the soft ROIs of years past, not going to cut it. I think you need to have really tangible, hard ROIs, whether that's sunsetting other products and funding it through sort of a net zero game, if you will, or providing value with integrating into your existing asset suite. So I mentioned platform over product. This is a classic example. I'll give you one example. I have a customer who their annual spend is $8 million with an endpoint protection vendor. And that vendor is not called Microsoft. And they have an E5 license with Microsoft. And the CISO has been under siege for 4 years to get rid of that and just use what they already pay for from Microsoft. And that CISO has been resisting that. And finally, the CFO went to this person, and the CFO, who's a woman, said, "It is no longer your decision. It is my decision. I am not signing this renewal with that vendor. Use Microsoft or your replacement will." And so that's an extreme example, but just think about the undertones of that as a salesperson, thinking a deal is going to sail on through and pass muster without you checking in on that and making sure that it meets the muster and passes the muster of the finance org. That's naive at best. So get in front of it proactively, make sure you have your ROI models you can present, and then it just doesn't slow down the deal, right? If it's, oh, okay, hang on, you need an ROI, oh, let me get it to you. And all of a sudden now 2-3 weeks are delayed in the deal. Now you're up against the end of the quarter. And again, Tom Hannigan last week mentioned that lack of linearity. You're up against the end of the quarter and you do unnatural things on discounts or whatever else. And your deal all of a sudden doesn't have the same makeup that it would have had and could have had if you were a little bit more proactive on the front end of it. So my advice is anticipate CFO and finance involvement, get in front of it early, build those relationships, and have a proactive ROI model for sure.
Awesome. And then what about the rate of failed projects?
It's amazing. When I was in the app dev space, the joke was that enterprise application development projects, you can double the time, you can double the budget, and you can cut in half the number of features that ultimately come out versus what was scoped initially. Wasn't too far from the truth. And so these complex projects, you look at BCG posted a stat, I think in the last month or so, that 70% of enterprise IT projects either fail or in part fail. 70%. And I don't have to tell you, these aren't $10 projects. These are multi-million-dollar projects. And there's a whole host of reasons why they fail. Some of it could be that it was overscoped. Some of it could be that maybe the number of constituents internally weren't involved and or didn't participate in defining the scope as robustly as they could have. Maybe it was the outcome was overstated. This kind of utopian outcome that is really hard to reach. The word transformation, I think, lulls people to sleep. Transformation generally is a stark change from the present to the future. It's really, really hard to get. It's really hard to get. So I think setting more realistic expectations would up the ante as far as project success. So, what they say about how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. And if you take that philosophy into enterprise projects and you can kind of bite off and have milestone successes, then you win over some credibility with customers. Now, the salesperson in all of us wants the big deal and say, hey, I'd rather go for the 8-figure deal now than a couple of 7-figure deals over the coming quarters. But I would caution you to say, be careful of failure, because a failure of epic proportions closes doors for you pretty much in perpetuity. So be careful of your scope and make sure you touch those requisite stakeholders. And your chances of success will increase exponentially, in my experience. The other piece I'll add, Randy, is a lot of on the vendor side, and I was guilty of this too, is that you don't want to add complexity or even the perception of complexity to slow down your deal. You're like, hey, listen, I'm at the end of the quarter. This is a big deal. Or I'm at the end of the year, and this is a big deal for me, and it's meaningful. And don't put any professional services into this thing. And don't add any friction, and just kind of leave it alone. And then boom, you throw all this stuff at a customer, and then what happens? Well, the customer, it takes them months and quarters to digest and ingest and put that stuff into practice, and your customer can go to sleep on you. So if you do the right thing on the front end of it, you're liable to have a more successful project with a shorter project cycle that opens doors for you to have a customer that could be a net new product customer in a different area sooner. So trying to balance that short-term, long-term thinking is really what I'm trying to get to. And I really impress upon our team to do just that.
Awesome. Very cool. And then the one kind of in the middle of kind of all this potential shit show exposures is really the CISO, right? So they got major pressure, 18 months, 10-year, if that. SolarWinds CISO, getting indicted from the stuff that happened a few years ago. I mean, that's brutal.
It's one of the most unenviable jobs if you look at the job description of a CISO. And everybody's up in arms about the CISO from SolarWinds getting indicted, and I know the CEO of SolarWinds is coming to his defense. And we'll see where this goes. I know that there's some talk about how much of this was he directly responsible for. It could be a little bit of pomp and circumstance, and it could be a statement from the SEC, because they do have their new cyber reporting guidelines that they've published. And anybody on this forum can read that. It's basically a 4-day reporting milestone for a material cyber event. And there's all kinds of discussions in the CISO community about the viability of that. Do you want? You and I both know is there's publicized cyber breaches out there, like 23andMe, which is this ancestral database, got hacked, and it was an unbelievable amount of personal information. Microsoft was hacked, Okta was hacked. I mean, Boeing was hacked, Sony was hacked, Topgolf, and you name it. And the list goes on and on. Well, who was hacked that you don't hear about? And that's the other thing. It's kind of like the known unknown, because it's reputationally troublesome for a company to say, geez, we had a weakness in this area. I'm in the middle of all that. Just to say, okay, hey, quiet, hush, hush. We got hacked. Let's patch this. But the CISO's reputation, personal and professional reputation on the line, is really unprecedented. I've never seen something like that happen in all the years I've been selling. And we'll see where this goes, but I think it underscores the fact that you really need to take proactive efforts within your security infrastructure. And it's so complex today with cloud and multi-cloud and your internal assets. You have work from anywhere, and people just social engineering of users that might not be as sophisticated. My 81-year-old dad, I know I tend to be his IT technician sometimes, and God forbid that he ever got on the corporate network. I don't even think he could spell VPN. It's kind of those things that all manifest themselves, and they put themselves right on the plate of the CISO. And it's a really, really difficult job. So, making sure you have a good cyber ecosystem internally, good people you can trust, maybe a set of external partners, a little self-serving there, but it's an all hands on deck scenario. Because look at the personal and professional exposure these CISOs have.
Totally. All right. So in summary, selling managed cyber services to enterprise clients, your top 4 are: number 1, platform over product; number 2, make sure you're getting the CFO at the company you're selling to involved early and often with a compelling value prop; Number 3, the rate of failed projects. And number 4, just realize that don't be a CISO.
Well, if you do, make sure you have some great D&O insurance.
There you go. So now going back to the Nyanisms, if I'm saying that right. So now is not soon enough.
Well, sales thinking, Randy, we get paid to close. And so now is not soon enough. Again, I'll go back to Tommy Hennigan. You want to wait until the back half of the quarter, then you're gonna be digging into your pocket for discounts. And ultimately, you and me have to go to HQ and understand, well, why did you let it slip until week 10, week 11, week 12 of the quarter? So if we can do it better earlier, why don't we take that aggressive step? So yes, that is a broken record. Will DeCandro heard me say that every Monday morning forecast call, probably for, 7 years.
Great. And then what about you can't shoot a buck from the lodge?
Well, at the end of the day, if you're getting your feet and toes warm in the lodge, then you ain't hunting. And so you and I both know is what happens in front of the customer is really where the battle's won. That's where the battle's fought. That's where the battle's won. And that's where you have everlasting relationship value with customers, right? At the end of the day. So it's these jobs, back to my AT&T days, right? If it was an internal kind of white glove job, that didn't appeal to me. I wanted to be out there in front of customers, either with or without my sales teams, adding value, making sure that their reputational brand and the value that we're giving to customers is recognized. If it's not, put in a corrective action plan ASAP. But there is no substitute for proactive action, and the best downtime is spent in front of customers, in my opinion.
There you go. Violent agreement for sure. What about any advice that you would give to your younger self?
Well, we've all made mistakes, haven't we? And so admitting your mistakes and making sure you don't make them again. My younger self, one of the things I did do is I really invested in myself. Warren Buffett is somebody that I read thoroughly on his advice. And he always says, if I only gave you one thing in life, what would you do with it? And he said, you would take very good care of it, and you would clean it, and you would polish it, and you would invest in it. And he said, that's you and your brain. And so I would do more of that. I did a fair amount of it and invested in training, but I always put that kind of on the back burner when it was like, hey, I've got these deals that I'm working, and I'm building this business, and I've got young children, but I would always find time for really educating yourself, be a well-rounded individual, and continue to do that. I do that today. I read a lot. I have a personal library of books that range from real estate investing to dividend investing to tech sales and so forth.
Mine?
There you go. Yeah, I do. You said that to me, actually. Yeah.
Right.
And so it's things change. I mean, look, just as an example, look at the tech ecosystem that exists today that we're talking about versus when you and I were young salespeople in the market. It's 180 degrees different, right? Nobody had ever heard of cloud. Nobody had ever heard of SaaS. What the heck is that? And so if you're a professional that invests in yourselves and you can adapt easily enough, be open-minded, be respectful of others, work as a team, I think good things will come from that. I really do. So for those maybe people on the front end of their careers on this, that would be my sage advice. And just invest in yourself and keep investing in yourself.
Awesome. So you're kind of big deals, so almost kind of big game hunting. So how do you generate leads?
Yeah, it's a lot of it is existing customers from our parent company. That's one aspect of it. Some of it is building credibility with some of our partners. I mentioned Microsoft earlier. I don't want to do too much name dropping, but they can be, they're a tough tiger to grab by the tail. I'll tell you that much. But if you can help them with some very complex integrations and or competitive displacements, then they're going to introduce you. You start at second or third base with companies like that. You really do. And so it's less of a sales process and it's more of a deal integrity process. Hey, you're buying a suite of software. We're going to help you maximize and capitalize and extract the value out of that. And here's how we're going to do that as a point project, and then how on a continuum thereafter. So I would say, the OEM community, certainly your parent company community, and then a lot of it is personal relationships. I know in my past I've used SDR models, but we're selling 7 and 8 figure deals, and those deals are generally not done with a lower level IT contact. I've sold into IT before, and they're a valuable piece of it because they're the ones doing the nuts and bolts stuff, with you collaboratively in my world today. And so you have to make sure that you check that box. But when you're asking somebody for 8 figures over the course of a 3-year contract, that's a whole different kettle of fish. So some of that is just relationship building, people that you've worked with before, people that you've done right with before. They may move around a little bit. It's a pretty mobile society, typically vertical. It's like, oh, I worked for this bank and that bank and that bank, or this retailer and that retailer. But if you have an air of credibility as a professional, they'll take you with them. And so those are the tenets that I use. And then, I'll say this: take care of your own brand. Make sure that when you do say you're going to do something to a customer, you do it well, and then ask them for a reference. Do not be afraid to ask for a reference. And I think some salespeople fall short of that. But at the end of the day, you've delivered a quality service to a customer or a product or both, and they have gleaned value and ROI from that. It wouldn't have passed the CFO's muster if it didn't. Feel free to ask for that. Even if it's an anonymized reference, ask for it.
Totally. And along the way, you've been a big fan of MEDDIC or MedPIC from a qualification framework.
Yeah, I have. And what led me to that, interestingly, some of it I thought early in my career was a little bit of, a black art or maybe pop psychology. I'm like, this doesn't work. And then as I got into a leadership role, I realized that some of these deals that were slipping or that weren't real enough, or were more competitive, or were maybe advanced too early. As I started to peel into the DNA of why that happened, it was very evident to me that we just needed better discipline, and we needed a common set of terms and a common set of thoughts that we used that we could manage up, right? Because it's not just you and your customer. There's a whole internal back office ecosystem that needs to be satisfied. But at the end of the day, the MEDDIC framework, now MedPIC framework, gives you some very specific milestones and common terms that you can use. But you and I both know they're only as effective as how effectively and consistently you apply and use them. So you have to have common standards. You can't have standards for, let's say, one account or one enterprise salesperson and not the other, right? It has to be adopted by the ecosystem, and it has to become your way of life and the way you communicate, and the way you build out deals and ask for resources internally as well. And so it's really proved well, and it's accentuated based on what I'm doing today because of these fairly significant deals and the complexity of what it is that we do. It just reeks of a core necessity, and so we take that stuff pretty serious.
That's great. And then similarly, been leveraging Sandler along the way in your career for help with sales training.
Yeah, I have. Again, early on in my career, I was really fortunate to have a company that invested in me, and it really invested. It was a growing company and hired a bunch of young salespeople, and we thought we knew it all, but we didn't. And I remember the first 3 hours of Sandler. We're trying to tell the Sandler coach how much he didn't know and we did, and he course corrected us pretty quickly. And it's so I think if you're open minded about this, right? Sometimes it's I know how to do this, I do that. But do you really? And as much as you can always get a couple of tips and tricks out of something. So the Sandler stuff early on, and even stuff like Toastmasters, which is maybe a little antiquated. Dale Carnegie. I remember Warren Buffett. If you look, he went to Columbia. I think he got his MBA at Columbia, and he said on a podcast once, he said the most valuable education I got was the $100 Dale Carnegie cert. He said, I have it pinned up in my office to this day, because he was a shy guy, right? And he was nervous about public speaking and interacting with people. And he said, it helped me come out of my shell. And he said, that was the best $100 I ever spent. And so those are some things for people on this call. If you take note of it, again, invest in yourself. Don't be afraid of trying some external things. And there's so much courseware, Randy, that's available today for no cost. I mean, some of these LinkedIn courses are pretty powerful. And your employer, if they invest in their people, you can get them to sponsor some of these things. Take time out on your own. There's no substitute for just being sharper, being better, being smarter.
Totally. So Time flies when you're having fun. Awesome job today. Really appreciate it, Jim. So next week we have episode 151, Dave Schneider, who will be awesome as well. He's currently on a lot of boards, including Zscaler. He's probably best known for previously a longtime CRO and president at ServiceNow from basically 2011 to 2021. He's currently a GP at Cotu Management. And then the following week, December 18th, have Amit Bendoff, who's the CEO of Gong. So you're in some great company.
Nice. Roster, all-star roster. I feel humbled.
There you go. All good. So, all right, Jim, thanks so much. Tucker, thanks for your help behind the scenes. Phone Ready Leads, thanks for your sponsorship. And for those that are members of Sales Community, thanks. If you're not, you got the free link there. And everybody have a great day and great week. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Randy.